This is Support is Sexy, Episode 7, with personal branding expert Amanda Miller Littlejohn. Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, producer, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I talk to women entrepreneurs who share their journeys and the true stories of their wins and their lessons, and give you insight and inspiration to take your business and your life to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here. And as you know, it just would not be the same without you. So thank you for listening. And today I'm so excited to bring you our guest, Miss Amanda Miller Littlejohn. Now, Amanda creates relentlessly, but she says it was after years of working as a journalist, a layoff is what pushed her to finally become an entrepreneur. And now Amanda, as the founder of the PR firm Mopwater Social PR, she has helped organizations leverage mainstream media and publicity, blogs, and social media to build buzz online and offline. And now she is a top expert in personal branding and the host of the Package Your Genius podcast, which I love. And she uses her skills as a writer and a creative to teach her clients how to discover and package their genius, because we all have a bit of genius in us. We all have these gifts, but sometimes it's not knowing how to frame it that holds a lot of us back. So what you'll learn on this episode is the importance of being true to your authentic self, which is a very interesting theme that seems to keep coming up in all of these interviews. So I'm paying attention. Know what you want to be known for. She'll also tell you how to be a solution for your clients. So you're solving a problem for them, and it might even be a problem they don't even know they have. The 3 tips for building your personal brand and how to package your own genius. Also, how to scale your talent and your business. And then the importance of taking a moment to stop and celebrate yourself, which I am a big proponent of. I don't think we do it enough. Pausing for a minute in the rush, in the hustle, etc., to stop, be in the moment, and celebrate the things that we've accomplished and that we're doing for ourselves. That is really a way of taking care of yourself. So I know you'll enjoy this interview. It was a lot of fun. Without further ado, Amanda Miller Littlejohn. So Amanda, thank you so much for being here on the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you, Elayne, for having me. It's an honor to be here with you today.
Yay. So I have to ask you the question that I start off asking everyone. When did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
When did I first fall in love? I would say before I became a full-fledged entrepreneur, when I was in college. I was at Howard University, and I was writing, and I was an English major, but I had a lot of friends who were creative. And I remember one friend who was like a DJ or something, and his whole DJ scene was starting to blow up, and he's like, I need a bio to send to someone. Can you help me? And I helped him. And then kind of word got around that I could help people do that sort of thing. And it was kind of cool. It wasn't really entrepreneurship because no one was paying me, but it was exciting to see that I could use my skills to help people move their dreams forward.
So that was sort of the first indication of that without you even knowing what it was indicating.
Yeah, it just felt good to know that I could do something outside of the confines of a 9-to-5 job, or outside of, going in and clocking in to a job and sitting at a desk and being told what to do. It was cool that, I have these skills, people need these skills, and there was an exchange happening. Mm-hmm. That was very exciting to me. It made me feel powerful.
Now, you were an English major. Was your plan to go into journalism or writing, being a teacher? Because I was an English major at Hampton. I won't hold it against you. You went to Howard. Whatever. We're still friends.
Right?
But what was your plan? Did you have one where you're just like, I like English and we're going to see what happens?
Well, honestly, I was an English and history double major. I added the history after, I think, my sophomore year because I was having so much fun in my history class, and I loved understanding the context of things. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really have a plan. I had a scholarship And I felt like, well, if I'm essentially paying for my education, I should get to study what I want, much to the chagrin of my parents who wanted me to study something that had a clear financial trajectory. But I knew that, even in high school, and people who knew me growing up in Tennessee, I'm sure remember, like, I was the poet of my class in school. So I was always writing creatively. And so I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt what I loved and was most passionate about was writing. I saw myself as being the next Toni Morrison. So,
Mm.
yeah, so for me, it just made sense. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but I knew that I was passionate about writing. I was passionate about literature. I was passionate about storytelling. And so I just let that kind of lead the way.
So interesting because you are like me. I mean, I've always loved writing for as long as I can remember. I always say before I even knew how to write, I would scribble on a paper and do what I thought was writing when I was little.
Right.
But then when I went to college, I did the opposite of you. Well, it wasn't even what my parents thought. It was just what I thought everyone else was doing. So I majored in business. And I hated it, even though I'd always loved. But you followed your passion even that early and going into school. Now I was always passionate about writing, but really I was like, well, how do people make money writing? I'm not a writer like a Toni Morrison, or how do I make money from this? So I need to do. But then by sophomore year, after I full on hated accounting and all of the things that go into business, it was like a guidance counselor who said, well, what about English? And I thought, oh, yeah, I can major in that. And of course, you could be a teacher or a lawyer. There's so many things you can do with it. But
Right.
yeah, it's just one of those things of not even knowing how to make your passion become what you do as a career, but still being brave enough to choose that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny that you mentioned being a teacher or a lawyer. I think that was kind of how I stalled my parents once I realized that
Right.
so many English majors were going to law school. And my mom kept saying, get the fifth, do the fifth year and get your master's in education so you can teach. And I kept saying, I'm not, not,
Right.
not teaching. Although it's
No.
funny because now I do teach, but just not in that sense. So,
Right.
yeah, I absolutely had no idea. And I don't think I started getting nervous until maybe my junior year when I started to wonder, well, how is this major going to feed me? What am I going to do?
Right.
But I'm fortunate looking back that I stuck with it and that I chose that path because it's definitely served me well.
That's right. Now, you grew up in Nashville, right?
I sure did.
And now, what was a young Amanda like? You've always been a writer, you said, and writing poems.
Um, honestly, the young Amanda was pretty much like the old Amanda. It's funny because I have a friend who we grew up together and we reconnect like every 3 or 4 years, and I was telling him how I feel like I'm still the same person that I was back then, but I was creative, I was outside of the box, I was people have said to me that I marched to the beat of my own drum. I was always, and the term true to yourself always comes up. So kind of what I am now and how I see myself and carry myself now. And it's interesting because, those terms, marching to the beat of your own drum, being true to yourself, I think are synonymous with authenticity, which is something that I encourage and preach and teach as a personal branding consultant and coach now. So it's funny how all of that comes full circle. I always liked to create. When I was younger, I remember just making things. Like, even now, it's funny to reflect back. I remember being really young, creating, like drawing out these frames of what I thought a newspaper would look like. And I
Mm.
went out and reported a story from my backyard because there was a bird that fell out of a tree. So I drew the nest in the tree and I was writing this whole story about it. But I don't know, I guess I took myself seriously even back then. And I saw myself as being a future businesswoman, a future writer, but always creative, always kind of doing my own thing.
Now, did you have, well, I guess maybe not. Did you have examples of that? Or was it really you just knew this was the way you wanted to go or the thing you wanted to do? Or were there other people around you?
I think I just kind of came out different.
Yeah.
And um, No, I wouldn't say I had examples of writers or anyone who was doing the type of things that I wanted to do, the type of things that I do now. I think that both of my parents were both very independent thinkers and people. And, like my mom is not afraid to stand up for what she believes in, even if that means standing alone. She just doesn't care.
Mm.
I think to some degree I'm that way. My dad was just his own person, a true individual, and I definitely get that part from him. But from a career perspective, I didn't have any models. Honestly, I would say one of my earliest models was you. To
Oh,
be honest, like
oh, come on.
I swear to God, like, seeing your byline in the different magazines that I was reading and, creative director and the different things that you were doing. So I didn't have a name for what I wanted to do, but I think later when I would see people who were doing things, creating things, making their passions come alive and making their creative energies manifest into something that others could consume. That was very exciting to me.
Now, just so everybody knows, I did not pay Amanda to say that. She did that of her own free will. I did not see that coming, but
But
thank you.
it's very true. It's true.
Thank you. So, who would you say are some of the greatest, other than me, some of the greatest influences in your life?
I would say, I mean, if you were to look, I mean, everyone says this, but it has to be said. Oprah, of course,
Hmm.
is really has always been kind of an influence. It's just so powerful growing up and seeing her on TV. She has a tie to Nashville, which is where I grew up. And
Right.
so, she studied at Tennessee State University, where my parents went, where my husband went. And so, looking at what she's doing, she kind of had seemed like some similar passions. So she's definitely someone.
And
Um,
you had a picture with her recently on
I
Instagram.
I took a selfie with her.
You did
It
a
was
selfie with
I
Oprah, and
took
she took it, didn't she?
She did. She was very I need to get better at that. She was all about, capturing the best angle, which I said, "You go, Oprah."
I
I know
love it.
that's
I love. Was that at an event or?
It was. The Smithsonian had a reception for some of their supporters, the African American Museum of History and Culture that's opening in September. So they had a dinner for some of their supporters, and my husband, works for a corporation that supports the
Mm,
museum. So we went in that capacity.
that's wonderful, and that's in DC for everyone who wants to look into that, right?
Yes, absolutely. Very,
Oh,
very excited about the museum opening.
awesome. Now you started your career as a print journalist. That's what you ended up going into, right?
I did. So kind of. So at first I started doing communications at a foundation and then at a public affairs shop. But that was only for a couple of years before I got restless and that creative spirit started to run a little wild again. And, I was just doing what I always do. I was in DC and I noticed some changes that were happening on U Street that kind of made me think and made me ponder and made me a little angry. And so I wrote an essay about some of the changes that were happening. And it's so funny because that essay is 10 years old, but if you read it today, you would probably think that it was written today
Mm.
because some of the changes that I was seeing are extreme, like they are more pronounced and more extreme now.
What are some
But
of
it's
those changes? Just the
I mean,
neighborhood
yeah,
gentrification.
this gentrification, of a historically black strip that, you thought of. So for example, the essay was about how there's this huge mural of Duke Ellington on U Street, and one day I looked up and the mural was gone.
Mm.
And I was like, well, what happened to the mural? But across the street, they were building these brand new condos and they were calling the condos the Ellington. And so I just had an issue with, okay, kind of capitalizing off of the history of this place, but then these condos, who's going to live in these condos, right?
Right, right.
And so it was just about gentrification and the shifts of a neighborhood. And it wasn't so much an indictment on the people who were building the condos as much as how interesting it is that the history that kind of informs and makes a place unique is somehow or sometimes not preserved, and the people or the heritage of the people who made that place unique don't always get a chance to enjoy it as it evolves.
And that reflects so many cities now. Like you said, that might have been 10 years ago, but you look at today at Brooklyn and Harlem and parts of Detroit that is starting to happen too. It just seems and it's interesting too to strip literally the visual of these people who made these areas special and then turn the area into a condo.
But I think it's so interesting too that it's not like you just knock down everything and build new things. You want to keep those cool elements that make it a place. Like you want to reference the Ellington or Duke Ellington, but not really. You don't really want the people there.
Exactly.
So that's just interesting to me.
Now, how did you transition from your full-time job to entrepreneurship? It was sort of a push from the universe, if I'm not mistaken.
It was. There were so many steps along the way. So that essay led to me getting the journalism bug and starting to write part-time while I had a full-time job in communications. I got some really great advice from an editor at the Washington Post, because that's actually where that essay was published. And so I got some advice from an editor there who told me I needed to build up my book of clips if I wanted to be taken seriously as a writer. And so I did that. I wrote at small papers. I ended up landing a fellowship at Northwestern to learn long-form narrative journalism. And after that fellowship, I came back to D.C. and landed a job at the Washington City paper where I got to write. And, I was a full-time journalist. But I kind of entered journalism at the worst possible time because it was right when the internet was really beginning to hurt print publications because so much advertising was moving online. So you had sites like Craigslist that were popping up, and the classified advertising that the newspaper I was writing for really relied on started to dry up. And so I could kind of see the writing on the wall. I knew that I probably didn't have a very long future there. And that also coincided with the birth of my first child. And so I found myself on maternity leave and finding out that my job was going to be eliminated at the same time because they were making cuts to the editorial department. So I think it was either 4 or 5 writers kind of got the boot. And so I decided that I didn't want to rely on an employer for the future of my kids. Like it just made me feel really nervous to, apply for more jobs. I wanted to create a job. I wanted to create something that I had more control over. And that's when I really took the dive into entrepreneurship.
That's awesome. Now tell me, what was the discussion like with your husband when you decided, hey, I'm not going to look for another full-time job. I really want to do this entrepreneurship thing. Because I think that's one of the things that people not necessarily struggle with, but just how to have those conversations with the people in their lives if it's necessary.
Well, for me, I had a plan, and my husband and I are really good when we kind of strategize and think about short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. And so I think I pitched it to him as, I have maternity, I'll be paid through the next 3 months. We'll have money from that. But in these 3 months, I want to see if I can figure out something else that I can do and make something happen in an entrepreneurial sense. And so it just so happened that it coincided with him losing his job at the same time. So that was really unexpected and really scary. But I don't know, I just really believed in myself, and I really believed in what I had to offer. And I felt like it was possible for me to get work and to build a business based on my skills.
What year was this around? Was this around 2008 or?
It was
when everything was falling apart.
Exactly. It was the end of 2007, beginning of 2008 when everything was falling apart. And so the timing was very interesting, but it's funny. My husband ended up being unemployed for a full year, but that was also the first year of our son's life. And so, he was at home that whole year. We didn't have to do daycare because we kind of don't believe in that. We don't we're weird about our kids. We're like, when they're really young, like they're so susceptible to getting sick and germs. And so, if we couldn't have someone come to our house, we just would rather it be us. And so that was really cool. And we bonded as a new family in that way. So looking back, that was great.
Yeah, it's interesting how that worked out. You guys could have been like, oh, this is a crisis. What are we going to do? Everyone's running, trying to find a job, and your kid is in daycare, and nothing against the people who do that, but you just took it a different approach.
Well, make no mistake, we were stressed.
Right.
And my husband was looking for a job that whole year. But in retrospect, it's funny because I'll add another twist to the story. So, of course, we're both at home. I ended up getting pregnant again.
Oh, because what else is there to do?
What else is there to do? You're not working, But it was funny because when my husband ended up getting word that, the job one of the jobs he'd interviewed for was coming through, literally, his start date was the Monday, I think it was a week after Connor was born. So we had that whole year with Logan, and then Connor was born, and then my husband went to work. It was perfect.
It was perfect. The universe was really working in your favor.
Really, and we were both we were stressed. We were all stressed out for nothing.
Isn't that something? Wow.
It's crazy.
I love it. Now, how did you go about deciding what your thing or your business was going to be? Because a lot of people either in that situation or just trying to figure out how to say, well, these are the skills I have. How am I going to turn this into a business? Did you sort of experiment first, or what were knowing you had a plan, but I just want to hear about it.
Well, I really just assessed what I knew I was good at and what people were, seemed to always want my help with. And then also what audiences seem to have that need and also have a budget to pay for what I did. So my main skill was writing, and I knew people were always looking for writers. People were always somehow finding out about me, finding out that I wrote, and seeing if I could help them. Even when I was a journalist, I would talk to nonprofit organizers. And, they knew that since I was reporting for the paper, I had writing skills. So they would ask me if I could help with different things or if I knew someone who could help them. So I knew there was a need and apparently a shortage of writers and communicators who could really help you package your message in a way that makes sense and helps you reach your goals. And so I started there. I mean, it was not complicated. I didn't say I have 10 services. I literally just said, I'm a writer. Here's a list of things I can help write. And that list was the things that people had asked me for help with. So bios, organizational histories, newsletters, website copy, brochure copy, email marketing. This was before blogs were really big. So before most organizations had their own blogs, but a lot of people needed support, a lot of writing and language to crank out and not enough hands. And so I identified a couple of audiences that I thought were a solid target, like people who would have writing needs on a recurring basis. So I knew from being in communications that public affairs shops, smaller public affairs shops would sometimes get contracts and not have the full-time staff that could support the contracts, but they didn't necessarily want to hire someone just for that. So they might just need some contract support, right? Or someone who could help out for a couple of months or on a project basis. And that was literally how I packaged and pitched myself. I said, I'm not trying to work full time. I can take projects on a per project or contract basis. I'm fast and flexible. And you can essentially pay me by the project and not have to worry about paying my insurance or anything like that. So I try to think about how was hiring me in the best interest of the client, and then I pitched myself accordingly.
Right, that's great. So a few things in there. One is that point that you just made of thinking about what's in it for the client as opposed to just this is what I do, this is what I offer, having a sense of, well, why would they care or why would that still be of interest to them? I think is
Right.
important for people to remember. But also I love that you said instead of you thought about all the things you can do, but then you didn't try to say, I'm going to offer this full agency of all of these many things, which is okay if you can do that. But it seems like you really focused on, okay, writing is my thing. And then how can I build out from this one thing and offer it to
Right.
different clients instead of overwhelming yourself with trying to do 500 things when you're just starting.
Exactly. And I love to write. Writing energized me. It was something I had fun doing. And so for people, and that was even one of the things that I said in my little brochure that I created was, you might hate writing, but I love it.
Right.
I love it. And,
Right.
nothing excites me more than to, help you pull out your story and bring it to life through words. So let me, it's a headache for you. So give it to me. Let me
That's
do it.
great. That's really
Yeah.
tapping into an emotional need for the client. Like, yeah, I do hate writing or just don't feel like it or don't have time or
Or I
whatever.
don't think I'm good at it.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot too.
Now, how did you at that time, like you said, it was before blogs were popular and that kind of thing. How did you go about reaching out to people? Was it cold calling or was it email or a combination?
It was a combination. I remember I created this document. Well, first I started cold calling, and because I looked for, so I had my list of targets, or I had kind of an identity that I was going after. So I said small PR firms, small public affairs firms, not like the huge agencies, not an Edelman or an Ogilvy, but the ones that were small, the ones that were registered as DC government contractors. So they were on a list to get alerts whenever there were new jobs, and then just ones that I had found through my research. And I called and emailed, and I remember I got this lady on the phone and I was telling her about myself. I said, yeah, so, if you ever need a writer, because I know you do communications work, if you ever have any overflow, you need some support, I'm here on a contract basis. And she said, oh, okay, well, send me something. And I was like, okay. And I hung
Right.
up the phone. I was like, oh my God, I don't
You're
have
like, now I
anything.
got to send her something.
Right. And so from that minute, I said, okay, let me create something to send this woman. And I made a brochure that basically, captured everything I told her over the phone and shared a list of things that I could help write to give her some ideas, gave my contact information and, how to reach me. And so that document really became the basis for my marketing campaign. I sat down with my husband and we made a list of everyone we knew. So I had met a lot of people working as a journalist because you're interviewing people. So people knew me from that regard. And so I made a list of all the people I had talked to for stories, people who maybe reached out to me, people I'd reached out to, and we kind of had a good relationship. My husband made a list of all the people he knew, people who might know somebody else, And so we called them and emailed them and put the PDF in the email and just kind of, I'd set my pitch like, hey, I'm starting this business. I'm available for writing opportunities. So if you know someone, so I didn't put the onus on them. I said, if you know
Right.
someone who needs this type of work, I've attached a document that has more details, and I would love to, set up a call to talk to them, etc.
That's so important to do that outreach. I mean, to have a like we talked about before the call, just this idea of you start from, oh, I don't know anyone, or who am I going to reach out to, and then one of the best things to start with is a list. Who do you really know? Come
Exactly.
up with a list of who do you know, who do people you know, willing to give the contacts for, and then it's sort of a numbers game, right? Reaching out to as many people as
Exactly.
nice,
Exactly. It was a numbers game for
nice.
sure.
So now personal branding is very important and you sort of what you just talked about is all about personal branding and that is definitely your thing. What are 3 tips that you have for people wanting to expand their personal brands?
3 tips for people who want to expand their personal brands. I would say number one, know who you are and what you want to be known for. I know for me, that has really it's evolved. I won't say it's changed. It's just evolved. So, I am still a writer, but that's not really what I pitch myself as or people know me for. It's kind of the ground floor, and I've built levels on top of that. I would say the most recent level would be the personal branding piece. But know who you are and know what you want to be known for, because it can get tricky when, especially if you evolve, when you need to shift your messaging. So for some time after me being known as a writer, people really started to know me for social media because I was talking a lot about social media. I was teaching, doing webinars and training on it. And while I'm still passionate about it, I feel like my messaging and the things I teach on have evolved from there too. So I think that social media is a definite part of personal branding, but it's not, it's kind of a bullet underneath personal branding rather. And so now when I talk about what I do, I don't focus so much on social media. Social media is simply a tactic to help you brand yourself. So I guess that would be the second tip then, after knowing what you want to be known for, is making sure that your message aligns with what you want to be known for, right? So if, you say you want to be known for personal branding, but everything you share is about social media, you have to make a shift. So you have to make sure that what you're sharing, what you're talking about, what you're speaking about, what you're doing media interviews on is in alignment with the brand that you want to be known for today. So keep it current. And 3, I would say make sure you're talking to the end user, the person who needs you. A lot of times I think people just talk and share and create content with no one in mind. But especially if your personal brand is meant to be monetized, like you want to turn that into a revenue stream, make sure you're talking to the clients that you want to work with and the problems that they have. So going back to that example of when I started the writing business, didn't know personal branding as a term. I guess it comes naturally to me, but I thought about those communications agencies and the ones I talked to, and I knew that landing a contract suddenly could really put you in a bind if you didn't have the right people on your team, or you didn't have, the right resources to fulfill the contract that you just landed. And so if I could offer myself up as a solution for them when they're in a pinch, they're going to remember me, instead of me saying, "Hi, I'm a writer and I write so good and my words are so wonderful."
Right.
Now I'm a solution for you. When you land that contract and you're looking around like, who's going to write all this crap? Call me. I would love to help out. And so just really position yourself as a solution to the people that you want to hire you want to follow you want to buy your products, services, read your magazine, or whatever it is that you are putting out there. Position yourself as a solution to that end audience.
I love it. Those are fantastic tips. Now, I've read that you said a quote. I love pulling quotes from people that they've said somewhere. People usually get nervous before I say what the quote is, but yours is a good one. I know. But no, one of the great things you said is, "My genius is extracting what is special about you, YOU." So how do you do that for people in extracting their genius, so to speak?
It's interesting that I'm just so fortunate, and just even having this conversation, it just makes me think about all of the different steps that I've had along the journey. So I think that had I not taken that plunge into journalism, or that detour into journalism from the communications and then back to the communications, I would not have learned how to interview people. And interviewing, I use that when I meet with people, because I sit down with them and I just dig everything up and pull everything out of them. And most people are not accustomed to having those types of conversations. They definitely don't do self-inquiry. So they're not, introspective enough to always be thinking about themselves and what this means and how they feel about things. I have been keeping a journal since I was a child, so that comes very naturally to me. But I realized as I started doing this work that it doesn't come naturally for everyone. And so sometimes when people sit down with me, that's the first time that they've had people ask them these probing questions about themselves, why they made the decisions that they made, what they're passionate about or what made them want to engage in a certain activity or take a certain job or move to the city or marry this
And
person.
sometimes you need a person. I always tell people you need someone there sometimes to poke and push you a little bit to ask those questions that you don't even think to ask yourself. You know all the answers, but just hearing yourself even say things out loud like, oh, yeah, that's how I connected, how I can connect these dots.
But for me, so after, like you said, connecting those dots, I typically can see your common threads and common themes very easily after asking all of those questions. And so that is really, I think that I guess that's a gift, being able to extract that and then put it in an order that makes sense and help you see your own patterns.
Right. And it is a gift, too, to be able to interview people or get things out of people without feeling like you're sort of tearing into them or scrutinizing them, but to make them feel like you're having a conversation and really trying to get the best of them or from them.
I definitely think it's eye-opening, and some people have remarked that it's a little bit like therapy, and in a way it is, because most people are not just walking around pondering their lives.
Other than me and probably you. And
right.
I think people who journal are like that. I've been journaling since I don't know how old, at least 16. I have them from at least I'm 16, but I think I've been doing it a lot longer. But it's because we walk around thinking, what's my life about?
What is this about me?
Exactly. I need to write about it. Now, tell us about your branding box and what inspired you to create a product like that.
The branding box, that is my baby after my two actual babies.
Right.
The branding box, I was inspired to create it because, well, two things. When I encountered coaching as a medium and I started following different, information preneurs or infopreneurs and coaches, I remember I bought this program and I was fascinated by, number one, how much I learned from the program and how it was packaged in a way that was different from anything I'd ever seen. So it had some audio in it and there was like a workbook, and it just was exciting to me, and I felt excited to learn and to grow with it. And then the second part was when I started, turning this whole process of sitting down with people and extracting their genius, turning that into an actual coaching service that people pay me for. Because remember, I used to just do it either to write something about them or for free because I just like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I turned it into a service and it was for sale and I was marketing it and people were learning about it and purchasing it and referring other people to it, and I started to encounter so many more people than those in my network. So lots of strangers that I'd never met, but I'm digging into their stories and I have no frame of reference for who they are, because these were people I had not previously known. But I started to see a lot of common themes in both the challenges that they were having in terms of building their personal brands, getting clarity, figuring out how to use social media, figuring out what their media story was or their public speaking talk was. But then also I saw that, there was a very clear and chronological set of recommendations that I would typically give. And so I said, okay, I have a system. I clearly have a process that is repeatable. And I wanted to package that in a way for both myself and for my clients. Like, I wanted to create something that allowed me to just feel more confident when working with people. I could hand them something that was almost like my curriculum, right? Like, this is as the professor, here's the syllabus and here's the required reading. Like, these are the things that everybody needs to know.
Right.
And I think, so that was one part of the thinking, but it was also, I'm a personal branding coach helping, and it's very meta because I'm helping you build your personal brand, but my business is my personal brand, helping you build yours. And I started to think about, well, how can I scale this? I'm just a person, and obviously it's great to be busy and have clients, but how do I scale my talents and my gifts and my skills in a way that I can reach more people and grow my business without spending more of my time? Mm-hmm. So that was really how it all came together. And because I've been creating content, or I had been creating content for so long, it really wasn't anything for me to outline, articles or pull articles and find information that I thought people needed. Because I was even doing that with the sessions. The clients that I had, I would refer them to things I had written online when a certain issue came up. So I just started to think about what are the themes that people need to know about. And I figured out what my 5-point process was, or the 5 elements of personal brand positioning. And I just expanded from there and created this multimedia tool that I'm just really proud of and excited about. And it's just really powerful to see something that you made moving through the world.
Right. And I think and for everyone, so everyone knows, I'll have a link to be able to go to Amanda's website and to be able to see the branding box and all the other great things that she offers. So everyone will be able to see that and get that. So that'll be good. But I think one of the things that's interesting is what you talked about, the importance of considering scale, especially as a solopreneur, even if you have freelancers, et cetera, working with you, but it's just you essentially creating all of this and thinking about scale. So did you sort of feel that it just came to you at a point that you needed to think about that? Or was it something that, you always had in mind is eventually I'm going to have to scale this?
No, I didn't always have it in mind because I didn't know that it was going to be successful enough for me to feel like it could scale. And I think when I started doing those sessions, I didn't know that they were going to take off in the way that they did. And so once they did take off and people were referring me and, I would have, several sessions a day, it just it was a lot, honestly. And so a part of it was I wanted to have something that, yes, I could sell and it was independent of me, but I also wanted to have something that made it easier for me to interact with my clients because I felt like I had already done so much of the work and I was almost reinventing the wheel with each conversation. So why not have something that kind of starts that conversation? But I think later I saw the need for scale and how it was a tool that I could scale my time with for sure. But I don't even think that when I created the branding box that I even saw its full potential as a way for me to build out, more opportunities to scale in the form of events and workshops and programs. I just finished my first cohort of a group program that was based on the branding box. And that has been amazing, right? So I don't even know where all this could take me, where the branding box could take me in terms of, how many ways it can help me scale, but it's just given me so much. It's really, really amazing.
That's great. And now you have your Package Your Genius Academy. Is that the program that you just finished?
It is. It's the program I just finished, and we're launching another cohort in September. And so it was essentially a way for people who had always thought about the branding box, or some people who already had purchased the branding box, to go through it live with me leading them and deepening, the experience. So it didn't feel like, okay, I have this box and I'm by myself, but
right. And how long was the program? Is it 8 weeks?
Well, it started out as 8 weeks, but in September it's going to be 12 weeks because we're adding some implementation weeks in there just to give people time to complete the assignments. It's pretty rigorous. So, I'm asking you to do things every week. And so I wanted to make sure I was building in time and being realistic because I know everybody doesn't have a communications background. And so things that come really, really naturally and easily for me may take someone who is a physician or an attorney. It might take them a little bit longer than it takes me.
Right.
And so it's going to be 12 weeks, but it went really, really well. I'm so excited. My graduates are doing amazing things. One of my graduates just did an interview for Forbes last week.
Wow.
And she's speaking at a conference hosted by Working Mother magazine. And these are like her first conference, her first press. Like she's coming out of the gate, killing it.
Wow.
And yeah, so I'm super excited about all the progress that the students are making. And I'm excited about the potential of the program to reach even more and more people.
And that's amazing to be able to see those results turned out because that's what it's about, right? You're not just doing it just to satisfy your own ego or just to get the money. Of course, people pay for the program, but it's really about the results.
And I think it's powerful too to hear the students who say, they're in the group encouraging one another, saying, guys, just do it. Like, I know we don't know how this stuff works. Just trust the process and do it because it worked. And it does. And that was cool to see that in a new format, because obviously, when I talk to people one-on-one, I can see it happen. But to see them collectively going through this process and growing their social media followings. One woman grew her following from literally, she had 34 followers, I think, on Twitter, to now she has like 1,300. And that was over the span of just the 3 months that we were in the program.
Wow.
And so, yeah, really, really cool stuff.
That's amazing. So now you also have the podcast. I have to mention that. Everyone has to go subscribe to the Package Your Genius podcast. What made you decide to do that? Was it just again, more scale or more expansion of getting your message out there more?
I wish I could take credit for that, but I can't. So actually, a mutual friend, Audrey Adams, who is my friend Lauren's mom, encouraged me to start the podcast. And she told me that she felt like I had a voice that, people would love, and I needed a more intimate way to engage with my audience. And she just kept pushing me to do it. And I finally just said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And so it was really her idea. I mean, I had been listening to podcasts and kind of thinking about it, and I thought it was cool, but that push came from her. And so I'm so fortunate that she really supported me to bring it to life. And, she's actually even kind of been involved in my community and helped a few other people launch their podcasts too. So that's been a true blessing.
I love that. Now, one thing I wanted to ask about the Package Your Genius Academy, you said is starting again in September.
Yes.
Can people find out on your website if we link to your website, or is there a separate?
Absolutely. Well, they can go to amandamillerlittlejohn.com or packageyourgeniusacademy.com. Either way.
Okay.
All roads will lead to the academy.
Awesome. I'll make sure to have links for that in the show notes. So you mentioned Audrey Adams, who we love, and Lauren's actually going to be on the show once I can pin her down as far as her schedule, but she has said yes, which is great.
Awesome.
Yes. So what does your overall support network look like in your business or personal life, and how do you utilize it?
So my support network, business-wise, I have wonderful people like Audrey who see my potential in areas and push me to move forward. So she is my producer for the podcast. And so whenever I do record interviews live, I'm doing that with her in her studio. In terms of other people who are helping me bring all these projects to life, I have a program manager for the academy. I have web developer and a couple of graphic designers I work with, a couple of photographers I work with, an image consultant. So those are all people who are helping me bring client work to life. In terms of my own personal brand, I do have a photographer who I work with on a monthly basis to bring my brand and the box and the academy and all those things to life. So it is an interesting network of women, mostly women, except for my videographer and one of my graphic designers. And so they support me bringing it to life. I have, in terms of my personal support system, I would say my husband is the biggest element of that, just because we do have 2 young children, so there's a lot of coordination that has to happen on the home front. But he has always seen so the things I'm doing today, I feel like he saw them 10 years ago, right? Wow. So the things that I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened.
And he's like, I knew that.
Like, oh yeah, I knew. Remember when I told you that you were awesome? That's what I meant. And so just having that, and I always tell people, whether it's a spouse or a best friend or your parents, whoever's in your life, whoever you see the most, it really helps that they believe in you and they believe in your vision for yourself, your potential, and that they are positive. Even if they don't understand what you're doing or where you're going, they're still rooting for you and cheering for you and encouraging you, because there are times when it's so easy to just give up or say, this isn't working out the way that I thought. You really need people who are close by that support you.
That's so
And
true. I
then,
would say with my closest friends, they're not, I have friends, of course, who are close, who are entrepreneurs, but my friends from college, and they all have different careers in businesses. So when I'm talking professional careers, so when I talk about things with entrepreneurship, I always say they have to support my crazy. Because it's always so crazy,
right.
like, oh, yeah, I'm going to start doing this daily podcast. And then they're like, all right, girl, you can do it. They have no idea what I'm talking about. They're just like, yeah, you can
But they
do it. But
believe.
they believe in you, even if they don't know. Like you
Exactly.
said, that's so important. And as they say, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. So you need those people to be positive.
Exactly. So, I
Yes.
mean, in addition to my husband, I do have a couple of, obviously, Lauren, a mutual friend we both know, is very, very supportive and encouraging. A
Yeah.
really good friend, Crystal, who's supportive and encouraging. And I have a podcast accountability partner, Kylie, in Atlanta,
Oh,
who has
that's
a
smart.
podcast. So she's got a podcast and she's been doing it a little longer than me. So we need to get back on our weekly calls, but she just had a baby, so we're kind of taking a hiatus. But yeah, that's a very specific journey, right? Growing a podcast. And so we would talk about, well, what's working, um, what are you doing on social media to promote and give each other ideas, and then also just listen to one another's shows and just give us feedback, and
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, I listened, that was a great interview, just to know that there's someone out there who cares whether you do these things or not.
Right.
Because a lot of times, like you said, the people in your life, they may not listen to podcasts.
Right.
So they're not going to necessarily log on to iTunes and find out if you have a new episode. So it's important to have people in your circle who are into some of the things that you're doing, even if that's the only point of connection.
That's such a good point, Amanda. I was just going to say that because sometimes we get caught up in thinking that the person, whoever we bring into our life, has to be everything. And not even talking about relationship wise, just from a business, coaching, peer, mentor standpoint. Like you have this person who you're connected to around podcasts. And that's great. That's
Exactly.
your thing. Like that's what you talk about. There might be other things, but this is where your connection is. And I think enough
Hmm.
of us aren't okay with that. Like, oh, but they don't do this and they don't do that and they don't do this. But no, but this is the thing you have in common and where you can support each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Now, in the past year, what would you say the greatest lesson is that you've learned about yourself as a woman?
As a woman. Ah, wow, that's a big question, Elayne. I like it. I
I
like it.
try.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always the one asking the questions.
It's difficult being the interviewee, right?
Yeah. Okay. So there are a few things. Can I have more than one
Of
thing?
course, I have time. I want to be conscious of your time, but I have time.
What have I learned about myself as a woman? I have learned that I am. So I have this. My personality is very much. I move forward, and I know that it's almost a flaw. I don't stop to savor and think about, wow, I did that,
Mm.
and I don't wallow in achievement. I just kind of I'm on to the next. Like someone said to me last week or this week, I was like, oh, what's next for me? What am I doing? I'm not doing enough. And she was like, you're taking selfies with Oprah. You're fine. And I was like, oh, but
You're
that was
good.
last week, honey.
Exactly.
I was selfies with Oprah last week. I'm on to the next. What am I doing this week?
I love it.
So, but that's, that can be a flaw. But for me, this year, I think, and I'm approaching a milestone birthday. So, I think that's also a big part of it. But, this year I really realized I stopped and I just looked over, the last decade and really more specifically, even the last 3 years. And I just kind of marveled at what I've been able to accomplish. And, whenever I get anxiety about not being prepared or ready to step into a new opportunity, a new phase, a new moment of exposure, a new client, I just stopped and realized how much I've done. And I have this new personal mantra that's called you've already done the work.
Mm.
Like you have no reason to ever feel anxious or nervous or unprepared. You've already done the work. Like you have a box, for God's sake,
Right,
right? You
right.
have
A branding box.
a box full of all your knowledge. You've done the work. You're good, right?
Right.
So that's one. And just really learning how to savor, process, and just know that, be confident in all that I've done, and know that, so much of my path has been engineered in spite of me. And so anything that's coming my way, it's being engineered, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of divine. And so just relaxing and knowing that what's for me is coming to me, is already here, that I'm ready for it. And I don't have to rely on myself to feel prepared. I am prepared just by virtue of the fact that, things are unfolding as they should be. And then the second thing would be that I can manage a community of women. I think the group program, I was really nervous about it because, I am that creative person. I'm kind of a loner. I like to create and make my art and be an artist in my solitude and write, obviously, which takes solitude. And so I was really nervous about the idea of taking my product and facilitating a group, hoping that they would get along, hoping that they would, their personalities would mesh, hoping that they would be as open as I was. I mean, I'm a very open-hearted person, and
Mm-hmm.
so I can be. It can be difficult for me to open my personal space up for people that I don't know really, really well, and so the experience of leading the academy taught me that I can do it, and that I can facilitate others to have breakthroughs in a group format, not just one-on-one. And I mean, that might sound small, but that was a really powerful thing for me to learn because it kind of took the ceiling off of so many of the things that I want to do mentally. I think it just took the ceiling off and it showed me what was possible, what is possible for my brand and for my business.
Right. And we want to be aware of language. That's not small at all. That's a huge accomplishment to go from doing something or being a person who does most things in solitude as far as your creative work and then be able to work with a group. I know for me, being an introvert and having moments where you have to be extrovert or really connect with people, it takes a lot of energy to
It
do things like
does.
that. So, which isn't quote unquote a bad thing, but it is what it is. So even getting over that and being able to facilitate your group and move people, and not even just facilitate, like get them talking, but you're trying to turn out results. So that takes a
Exactly.
different kind of energy. So that's no small feat. And I think what you've talked about overall is the importance of taking a moment to celebrate yourself, which a lot
Mm-hmm.
of us don't do. I have a accountability call weekly with a friend of mine, a guy who's an entrepreneur, Kevin, and we started off with, okay, well, what are your 3 celebrations from the past week? Whatever
I
it is.
love
Yeah,
that.
whether it's small, not to say small, I don't like using that word, but if it's something like, I cleaned up my office this week, or I finally went through those papers, or I took a selfie with Oprah. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whatever that thing is, or I took a day to rest this week because I really needed it. Just with those, starting with gratitude, but 3 things that you're celebrating personally or around your business, and then we go into our 3 commitments for the next week.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
so
love
that's
that. And
yes.
I will say, even if, for the people who are listening who don't have an accountability partner, I mean, definitely get one. But in the meantime, that's also a great exercise to do in a journal. So
Yeah.
sometimes when I'm feeling kind of unfocused and then I want to, or I have a whole lot that is brimming inside and I want to share, I'll just make a list of everything that's happened recently, whether that's the last week or 2 weeks or however long since, the last time I did that exercise in the journal. And that's really affirming and cool to do because it's almost like you're giving yourself this internal high five and reminding yourself, look, you've done a lot. A whole
Right.
lot has happened. You should really be proud and you should really celebrate it.
That's right. It's a celebration and it's gratitude, which we all know there's even been science around this
Exactly.
now. It brings in even more when you're grateful for what you have.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So, what's next for you? I know you want to celebrate the now. We just talked about that. But what's next?
Right, right.
What's
What's
next for
next?
you?
What's
What
next? What's
else?
next?
Exactly. What are you most excited about
Oh,
today?
I'm excited. Oh my gosh, how many things? We know how we are. We're always
Right.
trying out something new. I'm excited about the next cohort for the academy. Obviously, I'm excited about a creative project that I'm working on, which is a book of um, inspirational writing. So, almost like poems that I've written
Mm,
that are
nice.
kind of inspiring or for for people who are starting businesses, etc. And so I'm going to be working on that in the next couple of months. I hope to have it ready by Christmas.
You plan to self-publish?
I do, because it's essentially it's going to be a combination of things that I've kind of already published that have gotten really good responses from my audience. So I want to kind of put them all in one
Together.
place.
So smart.
I would love to publish with a publisher, but for now, I'm going to just, because I have the content and everything already, I'm just going to just put it together for my audience to see, how they respond. And hopefully it can be something that people get into. And it was actually inspired by the branding box, because in the branding box, there's a little book of brand lessons. It's 30 lessons. And the people who have the box always say, oh my God, I love the little book of brand lessons because I can keep it in my purse, or I'll read one lesson before bed. And it's like, just they're self-contained lessons that you can just, breeze through in like 3 minutes. And that's the lesson for the day. Right. And so I thought, well, cool. If people are liking to consume things in that short form, what else can I put together that fills that need and supports people in a very short, because sometimes you just need to read something that's going to get you encouraged and help you push through the challenge at hand. You don't need to read a 250-page business book. You just need a couple of pages to help yourself together.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm excited about. I have some events in the works as well, not fleshed out enough for me to talk about them, but I definitely am just excited about connecting with more people and connecting the people of my audience in different ways. So obviously the podcast is one way I'm doing that, but I also want to do some in-person experiences, because those are always so much fun and so rewarding.
I think we're going back toward that. I mean, social media, of course, is great and people can connect with people all around the world, but I think in-person events, or in whatever way that looks, whether it's via Skype or however, is becoming more popular again. People want to connect in real life again. I think so.
And I think it's cool because social media is the way that so many of us are finding out about each other. So then it's like, we need to take that to the in-person. So it's like we didn't know each other, but social media allowed us to find out about each other. So now let's take the online to in real life.
Awesome. That's right. So I have one last question for you. Thank you so much for your time. I want to be aware, everyone, we're doing this on Father's Day. So Amanda was gracious enough, and her husband was gracious enough to let her go to do this with us. If you could think over your life and your career, and you had a chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be, and what would you say?
Oh, God.
Another one.
Are you trying to make me cry on Father's Day?
Yes.
Gosh, I have to say two people because it's Father's Day. I would thank my dad just for being himself and showing me that you can be yourself and be amazing. He is a huge inspiration for my work. So that would be one I have to say too, just because, and it's cool that it's Father's Day because it's so apropos. So my father, most brilliant person I've ever known, and he is ultimately the inspiration behind me wanting to help people package their genius, because it bothers me when people who are very talented, very intelligent, have so much to offer, are just not really good at marketing themselves, and they're just not good at connecting with their audiences. So I would thank him for being my inspiration. And he's no longer with us. He passed away last year.
Oh,
but
I'm sorry to hear that. He hears you still.
He does. And then I would thank my husband for being a great father and for loving me in such a way that I was able to see my own gifts and fueling me. I think love is so powerful because it can just fuel you to do things that you may not have had the courage to do without it. So I would definitely thank him. But I think those two people are two sides of the same coin. And so I couldn't, not thank my dad on Father's Day, but also my husband. I think without him, I would not be able to do any of the cool things that I'm most proud of, because just his encouragement, support, friendship, and love have helped me elevate, I think, to the place that I am and to wherever I'm going. So those two people I would definitely say.
Amanda, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I mean, it's so touching and just a beautiful thing to see how important these two men were and are in your life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on your podcast and to share your platform. I've been such a fan of yours for so many years,
Oh,
and I'm excited to see what you continue to do with your creative gifts. So thank you for having me.
of course. And before you go, let us know how we can support you. Of course, I'll have links to the website and all of your social media, all that great information. But what else can we do to support you products wise? Is it looking out for your academy?
Definitely. And I think if you go to the website and sign up for email updates, I'm always sharing what's new and upcoming. So, if you are interested in building your personal brand and you want to do that with the support of a community, the Package Your Genius Academy is an incredible experience and opportunity to do that. If you need to know what to do, you just want to move forward and get into action, I think the branding box is a phenomenal tool. I'm very, very proud of it. And all of that can be found on my website. But sign up for the newsletter so that you can get updates and know what I'm up to next, because I do not sit still for very long.
Exactly.
There's
You never
always
know.
something new. And so if you're not plugged in, you might miss something. So
Right.
that's the easiest way to do it. Just get plugged into the email updates so that you know of all the fun things that are coming up.
Awesome. And last thing, what is a parting piece of advice that you have for our audience before you go?
Parting piece of advice. I mean, so much of what I share is so very tactical. So I'll leave you with something inspirational. If you have a vision for yourself, for your life, for your gifts, if something comes to you, an idea, like the idea of this box just came to me, and I said one day, well, what if I had to put all this stuff into a box? What if, and I said that, like, have the audacity to follow your dreams, have the audacity to honor them. They were given to you for a reason. You may not know how it's going to work. I certainly didn't know how to put together a box,
Mm-hmm.
but I followed that to see where it would go. I found out that, all of these things can be figured out. And so when you have a dream or a vision or an idea, have the audacity to believe in it and to follow it and honor it, because it was given to you and no one else.
That's awesome. Amanda, thank you so much. I so appreciate you, especially on a day like today, but any day, all of the work that you're doing and bringing women together and just packaging your genius or helping them package their genius and sharing your genius with everyone.
Thank you, Elayne. I had
Yay!
a good time. Thanks so much.
Okay, hold on one second. All right. Thank you so much for listening to that episode of the Support is Sexy podcast. And I do hope that you got some inspiration from it. And the challenge is for you to do at least one thing. Take one thing from the episode, at least one thing. You can always do more, but at least one thing that will help you move one step closer to your dream. Whether that's launching a business, writing a book, whatever that thing is that you want to do, take something from this episode and move one step closer. And what I'll also ask of you, if you can tell me what you think about the episodes, what we've been doing, what you want to hear, what you like, what you experience while you're listening, go over to iTunes, leave us a review, and let me know what's going on. What are you thinking? What are you feeling about the show? What else can I do to be of service to you, which is what this is all about, to be of support to you. That's our buzzword, right? You can also go to my website, elaynefluker.com/podcast. So that's ELAYNEFLUKER.com/podcast. Hear more episodes there. Also have a bunch of great videos, tons of information. It's where I'm going to be spending a lot of time, and it's where I love to connect with you. So again, thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your support. And the most important thing I want you to remember is having it all does not mean doing it all alone. So now, go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.